I'm going to be talking to you about 7 essential things that I believe that are going to be important to your success in sublimation. If you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. It is The Blanks Spot. I'm going to give you guys a little peek of my shirt. So from now on, I'm going to be wearing messages. Okay. And I've always I've always worn messages, but I'm going to wear more messages about crafting and sublimation, mainly sublimation, because we're starting to get more and more people into our private Facebook group, which is the Blank Spot Sublimation group. If you're not a part of that, feel free. If you're a crafter, feel free to go over there, and you want to learn about sublimation, feel free to go over there, the Blanks Spot Sublimation group, and join our group. Just going to ask you to answer some questions. Answer the questions. I do check. Answer the questions, and we'll let you in. We're going to be talking about things more and more about people who are interested in sublimating. There's lots of new people still, people who are new to sublimation. I've been doing it probably for about 2.5 years now. My wife's been doing it, I think, probably about 6, 7 years now. And I know people who've been doing it for ages. Okay. And sublimation is not what a lot of people think it is. We recently, and I still say recently, it's been a little more than 6 months now, but we had a storefront, and in that storefront, we would have a lot of people inquire about sublimation. They were new to sublimation, local economy. They were new to sublimation, and they wanted answers. They wanted classes. They wanted answers. They wanted all types of things. I recall asking questions because I'm not the type of person who is going to just give up answers. I want to know what you know. I want to know how much you know, and I don't want to be talking to you, talking over your head or speaking over your head. So I remember asking questions of people, and first thing I asked, well, what type of printer do you have? They would say, well, I have a converted printer. I have an EcoTank, or I have a EcoTank printer. Or I would ask, well, how long have you been doing sublimation? And the first response would be, well, I've been doing t-shirts for 5 years. I've been doing t-shirts for 10 years. Well, just so you guys know, anybody who's out there listening, don't be offended, okay? But making t-shirts and doing sublimation are two different worlds. I'll say that again for anybody who missed it. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing t-shirts. A lot of people started off with vinyl. A lot of people may have started off with screen print transfers. And I think that was pretty much what a lot of people were doing. I'm not sure. There's lots of different transfer processes out there. But when you start talking about how much experience you have in the t-shirt industry, that has nothing to do with how long you've been sublimating, because sublimation is a science. And this video, I'm going to be talking about 7 things. I'm going to touch on 7 things that, in my opinion, my professional opinion, and I know, like I said, I've only been doing this for about 2.5 years. I've been in business for about 10, but I've been studying sublimation for some time. And in my professional opinion, there's about 7 things that are going to make you or break you in sublimation. Okay. So if you are new to sublimation, if you're new to this channel, make sure you follow us. Make sure you follow us wherever you're viewing us from, whether you see this on our Facebook page, whether you see this in our private Facebook group, whether you see this on YouTube or TikTok. Make sure you give us a follow and give us a like. And if it makes sense to you, drop a comment. I'm here for the questions as well. There's 7 things that I think that's going to make or break you in sublimation. Now, the one thing I have to get out of the way before we get started, there's a difference between sublimating as a craft and sublimating as a business. There's 2 totally different things. And I think a lot of people kind of mix that up. So if you're doing this, if you're just crafting, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. And as you begin to craft and you have fun with it, then you may not be in a position to invest a lot of money in doing what you're doing. Sublimation can be a tad bit on the expensive side. Okay, there's going to be 7 things. And I put this in our private Facebook group today, and I wanted to get some traction, because I wanted to see how many people were actually wanting to really understand sublimation. There are not a lot of people who really want to understand sublimation. They just want to do it. All right. You just want to do it. But you have to understand that there's rules to everything. Everything has rules. So now I put in a group and I'm going to read this. And I probably could have worded it a lot better in the group. But in the group, I said there are seven essential pieces to creating a great sublimation project. Can you name one? Okay. And it didn't take long because I think a lot of people have been doing the research. A lot of people have been studying, and I think a lot of the vets showed up. But that question, guys, was really for the people who recently joined the group and they expressed that they wanted to learn about sublimation. Okay. Um, so if you do need help, you have to go to the YouTube channel and get that attention, because that's where we're going to spend a lot of time. So one of the items we're going to get started. One of the 7 items that I believe that's essential to you having a great sublimation project are your substrates. Substrates. What's a substrate? A substrate is any item, any object that you're going to be sublimating on. It could be a tumbler. It could be a t-shirt. It can be a bag, a coaster, a keychain, a coffee cup. That substrate has to be quality. And if that substrate isn't quality, what's going to happen is your sublimation project is going to come out like garbage. That means that if you're going to the dollar store because you heard through the grapevine that there was some great sublimation, some cheap sublimation things out there, then and you get it and it doesn't come out like you want it to come out, then you're going to be upset. So your substrates matter. Okay, your substrates matter. You don't have to spend a whole ton of money on your substrates, but you do have to have verifiable substrates, meaning that the person, the company, the place that you're purchasing your substrates, they have to be great quality. They have to be verified already. Just because you went to a cheap website, a cheap platform to get sublimation products, it doesn't work out for you. There's a reason why. You end up buying twice. You know that old adage, you can measure once and cut twice, or you can measure twice and cut once. So even if you're crafting and you're not doing this for a business, you still want to make sure you have great sublimation products. Okay. Now, the substrates are important. Where you get your substrates is going to matter as well. Everybody wants a deal. Everybody wants to get the best bang for their buck. And that's what kind of draws you in. It draws you in because somebody's offering you a cheap substrate. Sometimes it's important to buy the onesies and the twosies and then test them out so you can make sure they're good quality. Okay. The next thing is, and this is what a lot of people that are crafting won't understand, but I'm going to drive this point home. Your sublimation printer matters. Now, there's a difference between having a sublimation printer, which you see behind me. That's a sublimation printer behind me. The Epson SureColor F170 sublimation printer. We're selling these by the bundles. There's a difference between having a sublimation printer and using a printer for sublimation. Huge difference. One is meant to sublimate, and the other is a cheaper version for people who want access. And as we all know, crafters want access. That's why we're here right now. Somebody's probably hoping that I drop a huge gem or a huge nugget that you can run away with and add to your craft or to your business. Hopefully I do that. Okay, hopefully I do that. Now, if you are interested in purchasing that printer, you can definitely go to our website. Everything is on our website, theblanksspot.com, and you can find out exactly how much this printer bundle is, because it's not just a printer, we have bundled it. But your sublimation printer is going to matter, okay? The printer matters. Why does it matter? Because you got to think about it. Ask yourself, how many people started crafting as a hobby or a side gig or a side hustle just to make some extra money, or just because it was fun, but you have a full-time job? As long as you have an actual sublimation printer, it's going to do self-maintenance and stays plugged in, versus having a printer that has been converted to do sublimation. Now we have converted printers inside the shop. We have workforce converted printers. We actually did use a an eco tank printer in the beginning when we first got started because we wanted to know what the hype was. If we were going to be talking about this, and we kind of forecasted this in our future, if we were going to be discussing these subjects, we had to know what people were using. So we didn't use a 2000 series. We actually used a 3000 series. I think it's a 3650. We still use it. We use it for our paperwork, but it's an EcoTank 3650 that we actually put sublimation ink inside of it. Okay. Um, and the print quality wasn't that great. It wasn't. I just, and we didn't even have a sublimation printer at the time. We only had workforce printers that were converted to sublimation, and the print quality it just wasn't that great. Okay, the print quality just wasn't that great. Okay, um, I tell you, there's a lot of people who are not going to look at the quality as much as the price. So your sublimation printer does matter. There's a difference between a sublimation printer and a printer that's being used for sublimation. Make sure you do your research, and don't just look up sublimation printer. Try dye sublimation printer when you're searching for sublimation printers. Okay. The next thing is your sublimation ink. There are lots of well-known companies that are selling sublimation ink, and everybody wants you to try their stuff. I mean, hell, we want you to try our stuff. We have our ink. I think my wife did I want to say about 18 months of research on our sublimation ink. She used a particular ink, and she wanted to be formulated with a nice sheen, a nice shine, and she did a lot of research, and she came up with a product that is very vibrant. So sublimation ink does matter. Um, I hear people talking about how their projects are coming out dull. They're talking about how their projects are coming out dull and it doesn't pop and it's not vibrant. These things that I'm talking about are going to determine whether your project is going to come out vibrant or not. Okay, it's going to determine how good your project comes out. I'm not gonna hang around the ink issue for a long time, but ink does matter. Okay. Also, sublimation paper. Here we go. Sublimation paper matters. See, it doesn't matter what you do in a lot of different instances. Paper does matter. You will see people coming on these platforms, and they will tell you that, well, paper really doesn't matter. Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is this. If you're currently using a sublimation paper that requires you to cover it with parchment paper or butcher paper, then in my opinion, that's a subpar paper. Something is missing. Somebody didn't do their due diligence. If you have to cover up that paper, that transfer, so it doesn't seep out or leak or bleed onto your press, then that's an issue. And for everybody who is advertising other papers, you want to think about the weight of the paper. You want to think about if that paper is going to jam in your printer. You want to think about the ink release. You want your ink to be on that substrate, not on the paper. If you sublimated an item and your ink is on that substrate, I'm going to slide to the next item. There's going to be some issues. There's going to be some issues that you may want to address. It could be your paper. Okay. Like I said, paper does matter. It could be your paper. You may have some subpar paper. You may be dealing with a company that hasn't upgraded their paper for a very long time. Just because it's a household name, it's a popular name, that doesn't mean that it's the better product. Okay. But there's another thing that you have to be mindful of when you're doing sublimation, and that is your temperature. Your temperature is also going to play a huge role in one of the seven essential items or seven essential things that's going to help you or pieces that's going to help you to creating a beautiful sublimation project. Temperature does matter. If you have to turn your heat press up to 400 degrees every time you sublimate, if you have to turn your tumbler press up or your oven up very high every time you sublimate, then you run the risk of burning your substrate. You run the risk of damaging your substrate. You're also burning up a lot of electricity and you're making your area really hot. Okay. Um, Having to press at a higher temperature, it lets me know that it's taking a longer time for that paper to get active. Okay. To get active, for that ink to activate. See, sublimation is a science. And that's the reason why a lot of people cannot just transition from going from doing HTV, which is heat transfer vinyl, to sublimation, because people will think that, you know what, it's just a transfer. I'm just pressing. Not true. Not true. Temperature does matter. The great thing about our sublimation paper, and I got to throw that in there since we out here. You can press with our sublimation paper with at a lower temperature. The idea behind being able to press at a lower temperature, it saves you money. Okay, it does save you money. So I'm gonna pause for a minute, answer a couple of questions. So what's the ideal temperature then, Drew? That is another issue. There's no ideal temperature across the board. However, when using our paper and a couple of other papers that are similar to ours, we recommend that you're pressing at 385 degrees. If you're doing shirts, it's going to be different with every heat press. It's going to be different with every tumbler press. It's going to be different with every press. But ideally, you don't want to have to press at 400 degrees. So as a crafter, if you're looking for a single answer, then sublimation is not going to be your thing. I'm not here to talk you out of it, but I just have to get you to understand that when you if you decide or want to know that think that it's a one answer for all, one size fits all, it's not going to happen like that. Does paper matter when it comes to having vibrant colors? Absolutely does, because your color is going to determine on how much of the ink has transferred from the paper. So if you look at the paper that you're currently using and you still see ink on it, and I'm just gonna give you guys an opportunity to do a test. Try this out, okay? Try to do a test on this. If you have a sublimation shirt, high polyester count. Now, going back to the substrates for a minute. If you have a high polyester count substrate, if you have a thicker substrate shirt, and you press that shirt and you still have ink on that transfer, excuse me, and you still have ink on that transfer, press it again. If you have a test shirt or some test fabric, press that transfer again. And if you can get a full or close to a full image off that second press, 9 times out of 10, you either had the wrong temperature, you got a subpar paper, or we're going to move into the next area, which is going to be the pressure. You're not utilizing the correct pressure. Every substrate is going to require a different pressure, or could require a different pressure. You have polyester has different variations. I'm a 70s baby. I can remember the butterfly collars with the polyester shirts, the silk type polyester shirts. Now you're hearing people say, I don't really like polyester. That's because that's what you're thinking about. But this shirt that I'm wearing right now, we sell these. These are TBS sublimation shirts, 100% polyester with the cotton feel. Okay. These are not shiny sheen shirts. If you have a shirt or a substrate that is not going to soak up that image, then you're going to have to adjust your temperature. Okay. You may have to adjust your pressure. If you're doing a book bag, it's a different polyester. If you're doing neoprene, it's a different polyester. if you're doing those lunch totes, the neoprene lunch totes, if you're doing a um a tumbler or a license tag, MDF, all those are different materials. And when you're using different materials, the pressures and the temperatures are going to be different. The pressures and the temperatures are going to be different. So if you're new to sublimation, you're just getting started, just getting your feet wet, and you're saying, hey, you know what? What can I do to be successful in sublimation? Well, you're going to need to know some key things that's going to help you to be successful. Once again, it's not a one size fits all. It's not. There's a lot of testing that's involved with sublimation, which is why a lot of people are not as successful as they want to be right now. I've just gone through 6 of the 7 pieces, essential pieces of sublimation. The last thing I'm going to talk about is time. Time is important as well. Anybody out there cook? Is anybody out there cooking? Anybody good in the kitchen? There's a lot of people that are right here in South Carolina, specifically Columbia, South Carolina, that say, hey, yeah, I can burn it up in the kitchen. I can throw down in the kitchen. Cooking in the kitchen is just like cooking in the crafting room. Cooking in the kitchen is just like sublimation. If you don't have the right ingredients, if you don't have the right temperature, if you don't have the right time, if you don't have the right pressure, if you don't have the right materials, it ain't going to work. It is not going to work. I used to live in Colorado a long time ago. I lived in Fort Carson, Colorado when I was in the military, and the elevation is very high. Okay, they're above sea level. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where we are below sea level, and then I've lived in between. I realized that because I love baking cakes. And I realized that when I was in Louisiana baking cakes, it was different from when I went to Colorado and baking cakes. The temperature's different. The times are different. I had to watch different things. I had to watch that I couldn't make sudden moves. Have you ever seen, like on television, your cake is rising and then somebody slams a door or something like that and it falls? That's not just with the souffle. That happens for real with cakes, okay? So every environment is different. So time plays a huge role in sublimation. My wife used to give these classes, these sublimation classes for beginners. She was giving these classes and she was talking about the time and time and the temperature and how they work together. And she was saying that if it's green, then it's undercooked. But if it is brown, it's overcooked. If you're looking at your colors and your colors are looking greenish, your blues don't really look that blue. It looks like a tint of green. Your reds don't really look red. It looks like it's supposed to be a red color, but it came out like a brown or orange. Well, it could be a possibility that you either burned it or you underpressed it or undercooked it. And those are some things that you're going to need to know in sublimation. So once again, sublimation is a science. It is something that you have to study, research, learn, and understand. You're not just gonna come in. I've been doing shirts for 15 years, and now you want to do sublimation, and thinking that you're just gonna slide in there and get it done. Some people pick up on it really quickly. I did. I know other people who have, and then I know some people who just they can't get it because they're not associating sublimation with being a science. Baking a cake is science. Placing a screen print transfer onto a shirt, placing a vinyl transfer onto a shirt, or even placing a DTF transfer onto a shirt, there's not a lot of science involved. Okay, there is some things that you have to do, but sublimation is an actual science. And if everything is running well, if everything is clicking and everything is lined up, then your scientific experiment is going to come out well. If not, then you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. So, to do a quick recap, there are 7 essential pieces that I believe that are important to creating a great sublimation project. One is going to be your substrates. Sublimation paper does matter. Sublimation ink does matter. Temperature, time, pressure. And you definitely want to, if you are into sublimation as a business, you definitely want to consider, and you just have to have access. If you're the person that has to have access, you have to be in control. If you're going to have a printer, invest in a sublimation printer. Okay. That's my recommendation. Now, why didn't I talk about measuring? Why didn't I talk about designing? Because you can buy quality sublimation transfers and you don't have to measure and you don't have to design.